Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Everybody's Business from Bloomberg Businessweek. I'm Stacey Bannock-Smith.
And I'm Max Chafkin. Stacey, Capitalism Death Watch 2025. New York City has elected a socialist mayor. We are going to talk about it.
True.
We're going to talk about all the people who are happy, who are mad, and where things are going.
I think capitalism, for what it's worth, is going to pull through. We will also be talking about the meteoric rise of the delivery business, how it's changing restaurants, how it's changing the way we eat, and how they solved the last mile problem.
Yeah, and our underrated story, the AI industry has created a clever new fundraising mechanism. Stacey, I'll give you a hint. It involves the two of us.
Did they need funds?
First, let's just talk about a couple of quick things that have happened in the last couple of days. So you and I have been talking offline. So many layoffs going on.
Yes.
You know, basically, it's been crazy.
It's interesting because for so long, for like a year now, the labor market's been kind of frozen and no one's known what to make of it. Hiring is, near decades like lows, but also layoffs are at like the lowest level in decades also. It was sort of like this frozen thing. And now we're hearing a lot about layoffs, which is kind of scary. It seems like maybe the scale is tipping, although definitely remains to be seen. We did get some good news out of the job market this week too. All eyes are on jobs right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing just a bunch of headlines if you're reading the news. So like Amazon, tens of thousands of people, UPS laying people off. Challenger Gray and Christmas, which is like a private company that tracks this stuff, said that in October, companies announced 153,000 worth of job cuts. That's the biggest number, I believe, in 20 years. So like this is something that's really going on. I mean, it's not clear what it means, though.
And the unemployment level is still quite low. And of course, we're not getting government data right now, which is because of the shutdown. But at the same time, there was a report out from ADP, which is a big data gathering firm too. And it said we added 40,000 jobs in October. So it's just the job market's so confusing.
Now, Stacey, like the sort of conventional wisdom is that this is AI related. A lot of these companies, one of the things you can do when you're laying people off to make people feel better about it, to make Wall Street feel better, is say this is something to do with AI because Wall Street loves that. But there's another theory, which is that basically companies just overhired during the pandemic. They basically just staffed up way too much because they were too worried about employees quitting, and that this is just like that part of the labor market sort of shaking out.
Also, there was so much growth happening during the later part of the pandemic, especially for tech companies, that I think a lot of companies really expected that kind of level of growth to keep going. But also, I think you're right, because it was so hard for companies to hire people for so long, letting people go maybe feels a little different than it would have felt 5 years ago, where it's, we can just find people if we need them again. And there's so much uncertainty in this economy right now. It's really hard to say which way things are going to go.
Yeah, labor hoarding. That's the technical term.
Labor hoarding. Yeah, it's real. I mean, in a lot of ways, though, it is really a feast or famine job market. For a lot of industries, this is a time of layoffs, of fear. For other industries like healthcare industry, like this is a time of major growth. And in some companies too, this is a time of major expansion. We just saw that Elon Musk got offered a record-breaking pay package of, I think, $1 trillion.
Yeah, Elon Musk. So actually today, we're recording this on Thursday, the 6th. Later today, Tesla shareholders are going to vote on this pay package that you mentioned. Enormous, biggest pay package in history. Remember a couple years ago when he got like a $50 billion pay package, or we were talking about this $50 billion pay package and everyone was like, wow, like how could a CEO ever get $50 billion in pay? Well, the Tesla board said, hold my beer to the other members of the Tesla board and are now trying to give him $1 trillion. And the crazy thing, Stacey, is I would be shocked if this thing doesn't pass. Like, he is going to get this pay package. There's a little bit of nuance. It's not like they're going to hand $1 trillion to him tomorrow. I think it's almost certain that shareholders are going to agree to this.
So why is this like an important moment in the economy? Like, why are people who don't like necessarily track Elon Musk, why is this interesting?
I mean, I don't know that it's an important moment in the economy. I think it's incredibly, like you're kind of hinting at, like it's kind of almost weirdly divorced from the real economy.
It does seem like it.
I do think, we're in this moment where like parts of Wall Street are doing very well, where certain stocks, especially any stock connected to artificial intelligence or can somehow claim that, is basically killing it. And Tesla, the company that Elon Musk runs, where he's CEO, that primarily makes cars, but also is kind of pitching itself as an AI company, their stock has been doing really well. The idea here is basically Musk is threatening to leave unless they give him a huge chunk of equity. He has about 12% of the company. He wants 25%. And he says he wants that because if not, he's going to start a different AI company someplace else. The board is essentially saying, hey, like we had no choice. We got to give him the money.
Okay, but like Max, can he possibly be worth $1 trillion?
I mean, Stacey, on one hand, the answer is probably no, like no one is worth $1 trillion. On the other hand, Elon Musk, as part of his media tour, went on the Joe Rogan podcast and he started talking about Tesla's future product portfolio. Let's give a listen.
Are you actively considering making an electric flying car? Is this like a real thing?
Well, we have to see in the
demo.
Yeah.
So when you do this, like, are you going to have a retractable wing? Like, what is the idea behind this? Don't be sly. Come on.
Well, I can't do the unveil before the unveil, but
tell me off air then.
I think it has a shot at being the most memorable product unveil ever. It has a shot.
And when do you plan on doing this? What's the goal?
Hopefully before the end of the year.
All right. So maybe, Stacey, maybe by the end of the year, we'll be in a flying car and we'll feel, if we are Tesla shareholders, we'll feel really good about this gigantic pay package.
I mean, if Elon Musk produces flying cars by the end of the year, then I will agree he should get $1 trillion. Max Shafkin, we both live in New York, and we both have, as of this week, a new mayor.
Yeah, I mean, it's the last day we get to live with the billionaires, right? Or the first day after they leave? I don't know.
Well, it is an interesting thing, right? So Zohran Mamdani is our new mayor, or will be our mayor as soon as he is sworn into office. And he is a democratic socialist. This has caused a lot of stress, I guess, among like business owners, billionaires, a lot of catastrophizing, a lot of people swearing they will leave the city.
Many lengthy tweets composed.
So many tweet threads.
By Bill Ackman.
It's hard to count.
The hedge fund billionaire who was very engaged in the race. There were a bunch of other really interesting elections on Tuesday.
Yes.
I mean, the top line is it was a great day from the Democrats. But we kind of wanted to talk about what the upshot is for business and kind of the interplay between politics and business that's been going on with this election and then going forward.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are very lucky to have with us Matt Yglesias, who writes the Slow Boring Substack, which is awesome. You should subscribe. And he is also a contributor to Bloomberg Opinion. Welcome, Matt.
Hi.
Okay, you wrote a great piece about the election of Mamdani. So before we get into kind of specifics, give us some sort of high-level takeaways as you saw this election go down in one of the big financial capitals of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like less noteworthy than it's being made out to be. If you go back in time 12 years to when Bill de Blasio was elected, you had this exact same discourse. You had left-wing people who were thrilled, who were like, he said he was going to end this tale of two cities, put inequality at the center of everything he does. He's teaching Barack Obama how it's done. Like, this is amazing. This is the future of Democrats. And you had a lot of wealthy people who felt targeted by that rhetoric, who were saying, this is going to be the end of the city, we're going to flee en masse, et cetera. What actually happened across his first term was he had meetings with business people. Like basically every mayor of every city everywhere, he doesn't actually want businesses to close or rich people to flee. He raised taxes a little bit. He expanded pre-K offerings. But it was so unremarkable in retrospect that people almost forget it happened and are now acting like this is the first time we've ever seen a progressive guy get elected mayor of a very heavily Democratic city.
I mean, one takeaway, I think, and I got this out of Matt's piece, and I've certainly been feeling it, is the sort of business class took a big L on this election. A bunch of very, very wealthy people threw huge sums of money behind Cuomo and not only managed to get a candidate that they did not like winning the Democratic primary, and now they have a, socialist mayor, Democratic socialist mayor. And it definitely feels like that is interesting, especially at a time when you've seen this kind of alliance between especially like tech CEOs, but maybe like the business world in general and Donald Trump, like where you have on one hand a bunch of these very wealthy guys suddenly feeling like, wow, like the White House is kind of open to us. Like I've heard this from CEO types. And at the same time, you have Zohran Mamdani getting up, giving this victory speech where he's, explicitly attacking that class. Let's actually listen to that quickly.
As has so often occurred, the billionaire class has sought to convince those making $30 an hour that their enemies are those earning $20 an hour. They want the people to fight amongst ourselves so that we remain distracted from the work of remaking a long broken system. We refuse to let them dictate the rules of the game anymore. They can play by the same rules as the rest of us.
And the way that like Bill Ackman and so on took a loss here is that Ackman did like the shortest tweet he's ever done in the history of his time on X, because he's known for doing these like 5,000 word galaxy brain.
It's like, congratulations on the win. Call me if I can do anything to help.
Exactly, like full capitulation. Not only is he not saying he's leaving New York, not only is he offering to help, not only is he being conciliatory, but he's doing it in a very, very short number of words.
Matt, I did want to ask you about one of the points that you make in your piece. I remember Bill de Blasio's campaign. I mean, it was a different moment in time, certainly, but it seemed more measured than this one. Like, Mamdani's got a lot of fire, and like definitely his rhetoric seems stronger and leftier to me. But you made this point in your piece that actually, when you get down to passing things and making the city work and collecting the garbage and things like that, that in the end, all the extremism kind of ends up becoming more of a job. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, what does the mayor do? Right? Like, what does the mayor actually?
Good question.
The mayor appoints a schools chancellor. The mayor appoints a sanitation commissioner, a police commissioner, and I can see. I mean, that Mamdani speech. If I was a billionaire, which I'm not, but I would take a little offense at that. Like, you think, like, what are the problems in New York City, right? Like, why isn't the subway more reliable? Why is it that New York has the highest per pupil spending in the country on its K-12 schools, but below average results? Why is there like garbage on the streets all the time? Like, it's not billionaires' fault. There's many things you could say about like America or the world in which you might want to characterize billionaires as somehow being the enemy. But New York City is a place that already has very high levels of taxes and very high levels of spending. And it's a place that people love. But what people love about New York is the cultural amenities, restaurants, the nightlife. Nobody is like, what's amazing about New York is the mix of tax revenues and public services. Like, we've really got it nailed here. So to an extent, I mean, I think the L for the billionaire class here is, how did they end up rallying behind Cuomo, who, this is a guy who was driven from office by sex scandals, right? If you look at the video that he launched his campaign with, he's talking about a sense that the city is out of control, and he's appealing to people's concerns about subway crime and other stuff like that. But if you talk to like the real tough on crime guys, the people from the Manhattan Institute, people in the NYPD, the person who they blame for that is Andrew Cuomo, who signed these bail reform and discovery reform laws. So he just seems like a really bad champion of sort of the forces of reform. But again, if you think about like what are the authorities of city government, you can't I don't know, you're not going to restructure the American economy. You can make things a little bit better or a little bit worse around the margin in certain very specific ways. You can maybe change housing in the city. He wants to cut bus fares, but like how? That's not a city agency. He doesn't have any revenue to work with. He's going to find himself negotiating with the council over really painful, annoying fiscal trade-offs. And I think that if he does a halfway responsible job, the people who are really enthusiastic about him are going to end up being a little disappointed by the sort of grubby, boring reality of being a mayor.
In certain ways, like the New Jersey governor's race was a more surprising result, like Mickey Sherrill winning by something like 13 points, a race that a lot of Republicans thought was going to be more competitive. Virginia, not close. Even the attorney general's race in Virginia, which again, that was another one where it looked like maybe the Republican could win, not that close. I'm just kind of curious what you think the takeaways are from this election as a whole.
Well, a lot of Democrats were going ahead and have sort of, trauma from polling misses in the past. And so they were looking at Sherrill up 5 and Spanberger up 9. And they were like, oh, my God, what if the polls are off by 5 and we lose in New Jersey? And it turns out the polls were off by 5 and it was just off by 5 in the other direction. So these errors happen, all the time. They are actually roughly symmetrical. And you see that Trump is performing about how you would expect an unpopular incumbent president to perform. There was a lot of worry about inflation a year ago. People voted for him because they wanted him to bring down the cost of living. He's done a lot of stuff in office, but he hasn't done that. He's renovating a ballroom. He's, tweeting odd memes. He's doing a lot of stuff with AI that is of incredible interest to the stock market. But regular people aren't seeing the kind of relief that they hoped for. So Democrats can ride that backlash, pretty far.
So seeing as how this seems to be a little bit of a national thing happening right now, and like you say, Matt, this could change, but if you're running a business, if you're one of the billionaires running a business or just a person running a business, what does this mean for people running businesses? Is this good news, bad news?
It's not the rising interest in socialism is obviously not something that business people are going to love. And, I think that the cost of housing in big coastal cities is a huge pain point for lots of people, for lots of jurisdictions. I think that business people would tell you that this is not the excesses of capitalism, that it's regulatory constraints on housing supply. But one way or another, it's making people very upset and is causing a lot of people in these blue cities to embrace sort of far left kind of ideas and trying to work with people to develop constructive solutions. There were these housing supply ballot initiatives that passed yesterday in New York. And interestingly, they passed with Mamdani's support and against Cuomo's opposition. And a lot of times the practical sort of conservative political coalition in New York City has been these outer borough NIMBYs plus Upper East Side billionaires plus cops. And it's
what a city.
It's a beautiful tapestry. I think that the billionaires may want to think about how that coalition works for them.
I think what everyone wants to know who's listening to this is Bill Ackman or the like. Is anyone going to actually leave? And then the other kind of question I have is, which is a related one, is basically at what point do you think some of these results scare sort of the business community enough that we start to see some defections from Trump? Where it becomes right? Like right now, like, you know.
Call me if I can help.
More than call me if I can help. I mean, like, there are a lot of big companies putting huge amounts of money, or not huge, but significant money into this East Wing ballroom project. And meanwhile, on MSNBC and in kind of left-wing media, every single day, people are really upset about this East Wing demolition. And like, I assume at some point we will start to see like movement, and we'll start to see a handful of billionaires, maybe it's Benioff, I don't know who, say, oh, you know, actually, as it turns out, free busing, it sounds pretty good, or whatever it is, you know, tries to get, because like a lot of these guys, like as much as they are ideological, they just want to be on the team that's, you know, that's in power, and they want to be able to. So I'm kind of curious how you see that playing out.
I mean, there was a fascinating Politico story about this litigation, about the Trump tariffs. And they were saying that the people who were litigating this, at first, they were like, they thought all these giant companies are going to support our position because the tariffs are bad. But they didn't want to do it because they were afraid of angering Trump by joining an anti-tariff lawsuit. So they wound up having a bunch of really small and medium-sized companies being their kind of go-to corporate plaintiffs. And, you know, I think corporate America should reconsider that kind of attitude. If you look at these election results, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries is clearly favored to be the next Speaker of the House. There are going to be hearings about who donated to the West Wing, who bought the Trump crypto fund, like what is going on. And you want to be able to say, even if you're not going to talk about, you know, state-owned grocery stores or free buses or globalizing the intifada, like you want to be able to say, look, I'm running my business here. When Trump does stuff that's good for business, of course we're for that. But when Trump does stuff that's bad for business, we're against that. And when Trump shakes us down for bribes, you know, we believe in the rule of law and the persistence of American liberalism. And a lot of companies seem to me to have bought in on this idea that Trump was going to be like Trump forever, right? But we're seeing the laws of political gravity, just like I think they will bring down the Mamdani hype among, you know, socialists in Brooklyn. The Trump bubble is popping now too. Politics keeps happening with backlash, alternation of power, overreach, limits. If you're a committed ideologue, then sure, you sign up with your team and you fight for it. If you're someone who's just trying to navigate these waters, like you want to navigate prudently. Ackman deciding after all these long tweets that he wants to say something nice. And I think, you know, Mamdani would be wise to invite some Wall Street titans to come have lunch with him. And they would be wise to say yes. Right? Everybody ultimately benefits from having business growth in the city that they are the mayor of. Like, that's just the reality.
I absolutely think if the Democrats have a good midterm, we are going to have the, like, Mark Zuckerberg free bus conversion. Like, he's going to go on Hassan Piker's Twitch stream and proclaim that, you know, actually on third thought, democratic socialism sounds
Brought
good.
to you by Meta.
Well, like Waymo will provide.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
See?
See, we've worked it out
So
already.
many synergies.
Waymo lobbyists, call us. Matt Yglesias, thank you for being here. Check out his newsletter, Slow Boring. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, Stacey, you know that one of my favorite topics is the things that Silicon Valley is ruining, right?
Yes, I do know that.
Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
we
yes.
got one to talk about today, and it's one that it's come up in my mind a couple times, but it really crystallized as I was reading this wonderful story in The Atlantic by Ellen Cushing, staff writer there. The story is about restaurants and the way that food delivery is changing food culture and the restaurant business, and Ellen is here to talk about it. Hey, Ellen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so I feel like this is a thing, and I said ruined, because that is kind of how I feel. I think there are different points of view, but why don't you just talk us through the premise of this story, like what you were trying to do, and like when we're talking about like how has food delivery changed the restaurant business, what are we actually talking about?
Yeah, so most people have probably noticed that delivery is more popular than it used to be. They have probably had the experience of being in a restaurant and it's like half empty, but there's 15 Uber Eats drivers like clustered in the front waiting for their orders. You've seen the plastic bags on people's doorsteps. If you live in New York, like I do, you see the e-bikes everywhere. You kind of know this is happening, but you may not know. In 2024, 3 out of every 4 restaurant orders was not eaten in a restaurant.
Wow.
This statistic just kind of like bounces around in my brain all
Wait,
the
is that
time now.
nationwide or?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like that includes McDonald's, that includes drive-thrus, but it is a huge number. 30% of full-service restaurants, which are like restaurants where you sit down and you have a waiter or a waitress and you have a napkin and a menu that you look at, that kind of restaurant, 30% of their orders are being eaten off premises now. So this is a huge change, and it has all of these downstream effects for restaurants, for eating, for cities, for traffic, for the environment. So I just got kind of obsessed with it and decided to figure out what I could figure out.
I mean, I knew it's definitely an issue in New York, which started during the pandemic. New York's always been a very food delivery-oriented place. But I guess the thing that kind of blows my mind about it is that these orders are so expensive. Like, I feel like I order a burrito and the burrito's like $12. And then somehow, by the time I am paying for the burrito, it is $40. I mean, I'm lazy enough that I do that math and it maths out for me, but I can't believe that this is a common thing.
I can't either. I talked to a driver in South Carolina who told me that he recently chauffeured like a single cup of ice cream to someone's house like 20 miles away. And he estimates that this person spent, I think it was like $20 on this ice cream, and he got paid like $3.
Jeez.
Let's just talk a little bit about the history here, which is, I guess, partly tied into the internet. And like that, one of the really cool things about your story is you spend time talking to one of the pioneers in the kind of internet-based food delivery world, a guy who created a company that was sold to Grubhub, who basically built some of the delivery infrastructure. These apps started to take off, like in 2013, 2014? You had Uber Eats, you had DoorDash. Talk a little bit about those businesses. Like, where did those businesses find an opportunity?
I mean, the thing about delivery is that everyone eats. So it is a huge potential market. So like you were saying, late 2000s, early 2010s, all of these companies started, figuring out that they could do this. The internet was becoming something that people had more access to, phones, et cetera. Restaurants in the beginning didn't want to facilitate delivery because it's annoying. But what happened in this moment is that restaurants turned over a core part of their business to Silicon Valley and they just never got it back. So these businesses kind of swooped in, were the middleman, and it was, peak ZERP era, huge subsidies. Every venture capitalist in California wanted to be the guy who funded the company that was the leader in delivery. And so they were all massively discounting, fighting with each other. This was an era where you could open your phone and, just be barraged with offers for 50% off whatever you wanted. And so what happened is that basically Silicon Valley created a market that did not previously exist for, delivery everything. And then they created the expectation that it would be really cheap.
Yeah, because they basically used, you said ZERP, the zero interest rate policy. There was tons of venture capital money flowing into these businesses, and they basically heavily subsidized your food delivery order, which was awesome back in the day, right?
It did rock.
Because you talked about, Stacey just brought up her burrito. It's a $12 burrito. You end up paying what, Stacey, $30, $40, whatever it is. But in 2013, truly. It was $13. Basically all of the cost, the driver got paid via the startup. The startup totally swallowed all of the technical costs and basically just passed on the full fare to the restaurant. It was awesome back then.
Yeah,
those were the days.
Basically. Those were the days. They lasted about 5 or 6 years. And then the other big inflection point is the pandemic. And this is a moment, obviously, we all remember where like ordering delivery kind of almost overnight became like something really virtuous, like the way you could help your local small businesses. And if there were any restaurants that weren't already signed up with Uber Eats or Grubhub or whatever, they signed up during the pandemic because they had to, stay open. And so then you have this second wave of every restaurant going delivery, and you have people who had previously been holding out, or ordering delivery, getting used to eating restaurant food at home. And you don't go back from that. Like once you have the experience of eating like a Wagyu steak, like in your bed watching TV, it's very hard to, train yourself to think that's not possible anymore. You know what I mean?
I feel that very deeply. And to me, I think the other real appeal of these sites like Grubhub and Seamless and things like that is that it was like a centralized place. It could help you find restaurants. It would offer you deals. But one of the things that I understood from the early days, and I don't know, it seems like this has shifted, and I'm curious to know why, is that for some reason, even though my burrito cost $30, like nobody along the way for a long time was making any money. Like somehow everybody was losing money on my $30 burrito for a long time. The restaurant, the delivery person. And so what happened there? Because the business model was always such a problematic thing.
Yeah, I mean, delivery doesn't make sense. Delivery is really expensive. You're introducing a middleman to a process, and that costs money. It costs labor, packaging, server space. You order pad thai from the place around the corner, and a company in California is facilitating all of this. That's kind of nuts. So it has always been really expensive. It's just that the cost of it was sort of obscured. And now some of the delivery companies are profitable. They've also really consolidated. So basically 2 companies control like 90% of the delivery market. So they are making some money, but basically nobody else is.
I want to talk about all the ways this is terrible and all the ways it has ruined food culture and restaurants. And like, if I were one of these delivery apps, and I were sitting here, like, I might tell a slightly different story. I think I would say that you're saying we addicted people to convenience, but actually what happened is people just decided they don't like restaurants as much as they thought they did. And that it isn't that we tricked anyone. It's that people decided actually being at home is awesome.
Yeah, they would certainly mount that argument. You often hear the argument also that delivery is really good for people with young children or people who have mobility issues. Like, delivery itself is not like pure evil, like delivery really serves a purpose. But I think the problem is that we haven't really figured out a way as a society to account for all of the externality that it causes in the world, produces in the world.
Ellen, can you talk about like the way that restaurants have changed because of this? Like how the dining experience, like even if you decide to go into a restaurant, you might be paying more because they have to charge more to make up for the DoorDash tax. But what are some of the other ways that this has changed how it actually is to like operate a restaurant or dine in a restaurant?
The 2 main things that are changing are the food itself. Restaurateurs told me that they're doing more braises, more dressings on the side. You have this sort of like fundamental physical problem with delivery, which is that if you put hot food in a plastic box, it starts to steam in its own heat and like immediately gets soggy. And so restaurateurs like want their food to be good for delivery, and so they're trying to develop dishes that can sort of withstand that.
French fries out, mashed potatoes in, or whatever.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Or like, this is kind of one of the many reasons why everything is a bowl now. Like that kind of food travels quite well. The other way that restaurants are changing is the physical space is changing. A lot of restaurants have redesigned their interiors to account for delivery. So a lot of them are hiring, design firms to put in cubbies or create a special place for drivers to stand so they're not just clogging the door. You're basically trying to like cram 2 experiences into one right now, where it's like many restaurants in this country are both a place for people to sit down dad's 50th birthday and have a nice meal with their family, and also like a vending machine. And those two things don't like actually work that well together. Like I've certainly had the experience of being in a restaurant and there's an Uber Eats driver like 1 inch behind me.
Right, bumping you with the bag, right?
Exactly. I don't blame that guy at all, but it's not that nice as an experience.
Is there any way that this is a win for restaurants? Are they seeing more orders? Is there an upside?
Not every restaurant hates delivery, though almost everyone I cold called was really happy to talk about how delivery has been a problem for them. You know, the argument for restaurants is that it gets your food in front of more people. You know, we don't know totally the counterfactual version of this. If delivery didn't exist tomorrow, would people go out to restaurants or would they just sit in their house and eat like frozen pizza? We don't know. It is possible that more people are eating restaurant food as a result of delivery than they would before. But no, I mean, generally speaking, restaurants, like the restaurateurs I talk to, basically feel like they have to do delivery because if they don't, they're leaving money on the table. But if they do delivery, they're forking over like 30% of their profits to another company.
Have either of you all been to Wonder? Do you know what that is?
I know what that is. I've not been because I find it pretty sinister.
It's like the natural conclusion of all of these trends. It's like just a counter, and it's basically like airplane food. It's like food that's pre-prepared in a factory or a central catering kitchen, then it's warmed up, and you have a lot of choices, and they're all like branded. It like really seems like airplane food. You can have a Wolfgang Puck something, and it's like entirely about the either pickup or delivery. And it's a restaurant that's created specifically for DoorDash.
Is it like a dark store? You know, like the dark stores that are just made as like distribution points for Amazon? Or like can regular people go in and just order something directly? Like could I go in to Wonder and order a burger and
if you kind of wanted to
a KFC
punish
biscuit.
yourself, you could walk into a Wonder. Most of them have some seating and most of them you can order at the counter, but they're designed for delivery.
It's so funny. The guy who started it, Mark Laurie, his previous company was Jet, which is like the Walmart.com. And I sometimes just feel like he is on a mission to destroy every small business in America. Like, he's like, we got Walmart and we brought it to the internet, and now I'm going to do the same thing to restaurants. You really, like, something profound, like culturally profound, is lost when you take away restaurants. Like, it's not just sad for the business owners who are struggling to deal with it. It's sad for us.
I was going to say, you know, this reminds me of back in the 50s. They used to have those diners where the food would be, you know, like in a little locker and you put like a coin in the slot. An automat. Yes, an automat. Thank you. Although it feels dissociative and dystopian, I definitely agree. I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem that different from an automat to me.
It's not. I think the problem is the scale. Like, the thing that freaks me out here is not that delivery is available to people. It's that delivery is how America eats. And the thing, I love restaurants. It's a cliche, but restaurants bring people together and delivery doesn't do that. And the thing I worry about is like what happened to movie theaters happening. They still exist. You can still go see a movie in a theater, but they're, you know, struggling. You're always worried your favorite one's going to close. It's no longer kind of a community gathering space.
Any sign of a backlash? Sometimes these trends seem more certain. I don't know. Like some of the stuff we're talking about, it seems in the same way that like young people are shunning Facebook or whatever. Any chance that they might shun DoorDash or get more into that physical experience, basically not go to the Wonders of the world and instead opt for something, you know, that feels more like a conventional restaurant? Or are we just old?
I mean, I will say that 13% of people under 45 use delivery once a day. So
once a day? Food delivery?
Yeah. So
wow.
I'm not like totally optimistic about this, though. I mean, I think consumers are starting to A, understand the dynamics a little bit better, and B, experiencing some sticker shock when they get their burrito or whatever. I'm really curious what happens if we enter a recession and people become even more price sensitive, and, does paying $40 for some kind of tepid pasta feel like a good deal then? I don't know. So people may turn away from delivery, but I don't think it will be ideological. I think it will be practical.
All right, Ellen, that was great. Stick around. We're going to do our underrated segment in 1 second.
I can't wait.
So we've now come to the part of the show where we talk about something that is underrated, a piece of news that maybe did not get the attention it should have. And this has been kind of an intense week, so a lot to choose from. But Max, this one's yours.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what it is.
And I wanted Ellen to stick around for this because it has a tech angle. But what I want to do is, earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal has their tech event going on in California. And the chief financial officer of OpenAI, the big chatbot company, she gave a talk and she said something that has a lot of people very angry. And I want to play the clip for both of you, and you guys can try to tell me what exactly people are angry about. Sarah Fryer, OpenAI chief financial officer.
But even in areas like open source, we're attempting to put the state-of-the-art model always out into the world. And in order to do that, we always want to be on the frontier chip. So the question is, how long does a chip remain on the frontier? Is it 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or even longer? Now, in a world where we have no compute, or we're compute constrained, we are absolutely using chips that are A100 equivalents that have been around maybe 6-7 years at this point in time. If that's the case, financing chips gets a lot easier. If the timeline on the chip stays short, that gets harder. And so this is where we're looking for an ecosystem of banks, private equity, maybe even governmental, the ways governments can come to bear.
Okay, what are people mad about?
Ellen, what's your guess? I have an idea, but it's a little out there.
They're mad that this person's trying to get the government to pay for her chips?
Yes.
Do you think that's it?
That is it. The hottest company in the world, the most valuable private company, I think, of all time.
Right.
A company that is supposedly on the verge of creating machine gods that will be worth many trillions of dollars. The CFO got up and basically suggested that they need the government to create a backstop, effectively an OpenAI bailout.
Right. And OpenAI bailout, at the same time as I'm sure they're fighting back against all kind of, actual regulation.
So first of all, everyone is very mad about this. As I said, Ron DeSantis has been tweeting up a storm.
Not Ron DeSantis.
He is very unhappy. Let me find some of the DeSantis material that I can read to you just so you're fully up to speed on this. The rush to secure an unprecedented number of policy favors, from regulatory moratoriums to abrogation of intellectual property, a lot of big words for Ron here, was always about using too big to fail as the industry's risk mitigation strategy. Now it's out in the open. OpenAI kind of backed off of this and said, well, we didn't actually mean we need a government bailout. We were actually just talking about, policies and industrial capacity, and kind of trying to vague things up a little bit to say that we weren't specifically asking for money. But I think a lot of people who are following the space closely, as well as people on Wall Street, are sort of worried about this just because so much money has gone into these data centers. There are all these circular deals, and there's the risk that if it starts to fall apart, it could spill over, and we might all need to become investors in OpenAI.
Right. They can kind of hold the whole world, sort of hostage because this industry is so big.
What's interesting to me is that the whole banking industry has sort of operated in this way ever since the financial crisis, which is the companies are private when times are good and they're public when times are bad. And that has its own set of problems. What I find interesting now is for AI, times are really good right now. So the idea of somehow getting all the upside of being a private company while all the upside of being a government entity is, that's the dream for companies. I don't see anything wrong with, a company wanting that. but I see something wrong with us doing it. I hope we don't, because it gets us into like, suddenly this stuff gets priced in and then the whole economy is depending on, but in a lot of ways, the whole economy is depending on AI right now. So if the AI bubble pops, it is such a systemic risk that maybe it's not an unrealistic ask. They're just leveraging. It's like any job interview. They're anchoring expectations.
Yeah. The other thing is maybe they're just like trying to see like carpe diem. You've got Donald Trump in office. He's very close to many of these companies. Maybe they just see essentially there's a political opportunity to get some policy concessions that they won't be able to get from like even J.D. Vance maybe, or obviously Ron DeSantis. He's not on board with this.
It sounds like she's kind of saying, like we don't need your money, but if you wanted to give it to us, like we like that might be an interesting idea. It's like this is a test balloon, right?
Same, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
Ellen Cushing, thank you for being here. You're going to have to come back and do this again some other time.
I can't wait. Sounds good.
Next time, bring a cup of ice cream.
Yeah, I'll bring you a melting cup of ice cream.
Just order it. We could order it right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Stacey, before we go, I gotta apologize to you and to our listeners.
Okay, yeah.
Correction. During the intro last week to the segment on the movie business, I called Superman a flop. Now, there are articles that you can find on the internet describing it this way, but during the conversation with Sean Fennessy, and this did not make it into the final cut of the show, he sort of explained why I was wrong. And I just wanted to kind of pass that along, just in case there are any Superman heads who heard that episode and were mad. Now, here's the thing. It was not a flop. It did actually quite well in the United States. The problem for Superman is it did not do well in other countries, particularly in China. Now, some of that has to do with U.S.-China relations, and maybe some of it just has to do with Superman, because it's like truth, justice, and the American way. It's seen as overly U.S.-centric or something like that. So I am sorry. I regret the error. Superman, not a flop. Good job, Superman.
This show is produced by Stacey Wong. Magnus Henriksen is our supervising producer, and Amy Keene is our executive producer. Sam Rogich handles engineering, and Dave Purcell fact-checks. Sage Bauman heads Bloomberg Podcasts. Special thanks to Jeff Muskus, Julia Rubin, and Maria Ling. If you have a minute, please rate and review the show. It means a lot to us. And if you have a story that should be our business, email us at everybodies@bloomberg.net. That is everybody's with an S at bloomberg.net.
Or if you have something to complain about, send us the errors and we'll correct them.
Yes, indeed. If we happen to incorrectly say that a movie did not make money when it did, definitely send us that email. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.